Okay, well, let's proceed with the assignation of each team's position in the debate. So, in my hands, I have a paper with 4 written on it and another one with against. I need one team member to choose one hand. My right hand or my left hand?
Left hand.
My left hand, okay. So, this is the 4 position. Please, I need people to keep manners, especially in a conversation with so many assistants. But this means, Marcos, what team do you belong to?
Politia.
Okay, this means then that Politia will have the 4 position, and Alfonso 13 will have the against position. Okay. Are all team members here?
Yeah, I think so.
I think my teammate is having some problems when it comes to like coming into the chat, like the room, but he'll come in like a couple seconds. Also, Juan Pablo Avila,
Yeah.
He's not allowed to speak.
Okay, can he raise his hand so I can give him permission?
There he is.
Okay, I don't know how to do this, but I'll try. Can he do it again?
It's done. He can speak now.
Okay.
Yeah, now I can speak. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do it, but you're welcome. Okay. So, as you should know, all team members must turn their cameras on during the debate. You only turn your microphone on while you speak. For asking questions, you must use the raising hand function, and you can also show it in the camera like this. And regarding evidence, you have to give us enough information for the panel to actually check if the evidence is correct and how relevant it is. And each team has the ability to denounce to the jury that if he thinks that the one evidence is not correct or is not true, in which case we would have to ask to the other team to give us the evidence to check for its verification. But this would be a very unlikely event, so I don't expect it to happen. Okay, are we all here? Can we start now?
Yes, sorry. I have a problem, and it's that it doesn't let me put the camera on for...
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Okay. So, who's gonna speak now?
I am.
Okay.
I am Ron. Okay.
Okay, so I'm ready.
I'm so sorry, but my teammate isn't here yet.
Okay, sorry.
I'm so sorry.
We'll wait for some
He's
minutes.
having some problems, and we're trying to fix it.
It's okay. If you still are unable to fix it, just tell us and we'll work something out.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, Alfonso 13, have you solved your problem?
Not quite. My coordinator is telling me that she's talking with Antonio to fix it.
Okay, we cannot wait too much.
All right, it'll just be a second. He's trying with another like model.
Okay, if he's unable to connect, we'll just do like a FaceTime through your account or something like that, okay?
I think he's connected. Maybe he can send the hand.
Yeah, is David? David? Okay. So, is he connected now?
I think he's prepared. Yeah.
Yes,
David, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Can
can
speak.
speak. Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we can start now. Okay. At your first word.
Okay, so I'll be starting now. Good afternoon. My name is Adriana, and today I will be establishing the arguments for why our team, Politea, believes the current educational system is adequate in preparing students for their lives after graduation. We will substantiate this position through two primary arguments, one of provable success derived from our current system, and another from the philosophical value of having an educational system like our own. However, before we begin to elaborate on these 2 points, we must first clarify some fundamental aspects of our position. For one, while our position may be fundamentally defensive of the status quo, by no means do we think that the system cannot be improved in some ways. Our position instead posits that while there can be improvements to the system, that does not mean that there is some overlying problem with the school system that is preventing students from navigating life after graduation. This leads into our first argument, that of provable success. While the other side may be offering circumstantial evidence about why certain minor aspects of the current curriculum could be improved, their position hinges on the idea that education is the reason why young adults are unprepared for adulthood. However, as we'll see, they'll have a much harder time actually proving that the education system is at all contributing to a failure of young adults. This is because in order to reach that conclusion, they must ignore the vast good that modern education has done to society and the actual socioeconomic factors that have contributed to the poor position of young people in the economy, and instead paint a false picture of a generation left ignorant by some horrible school system. Also, what's interesting is that when you compare, when you take individual students in similar socioeconomic circumstances and compare them based on how much education they've actually received, time and time again, education is clearly a massive factor in their material success in life. Now, our second argument focuses on a different aspect than the material outcomes of students. This aspect is the value of a general education system like our own in creating individuals that are mentally capable of improving further. If there's one truth in society, is that knowledge is power. And by giving people the environment in which they are constantly given the tools to gain more knowledge, while building a skill set that allows for further knowledge to be gained, you prepare them to thrive in the world as best as they can. While it may be hard and frustrating, what we want to address is that the idea that this difficulty and rigor is something inherently negative is just incorrect. The truth is that life also takes rigor, and schools that train their students to embrace obstacles instead of avoiding them. And always seek comfort. Don't create the same long-term work ethic that difficult school does. And our current education system builds work ethic, adaptability, and ability to use foundational skills, such as language. In conclusion, those are our two main arguments, that of the objective benefit that modern education has had on our society, and of the philosophical benefit that our education has on developing well-rounded individuals. We look forward to further developing our positions as we progress in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your turn, Adriana. Okay, so now it is the turn of the against team introductor.
Okay, just trying. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. 1 sec, I'm setting my timer.
Whenever you want.
Right. Here we have a high school sophomore year Spanish language and literature exam. The last exercise worth 2 out of 10 points is as follows. Syntactically analyze the sentence "the guy who was really sympathetic greeted me." 2 out of 10 points. 1/5 of the year worth in this question. Yet it took 0.46 seconds for Google to analyze this phrase with 0 errors. After seeing this, do you really think that the skills we are taught will be useful for our future, considering that my smartphone can perform them flawlessly in less than 1 second? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aksan, and I will be the introducer of today's debate. My team and I will be answering the question of today's debate: does 21st century education adequately prepare students for the reality they will face after finishing their education? With a strong no. We will be defending this stance with 2 solid arguments: labor market and mental health. Nonetheless, I should first clarify some basic concepts and boundaries of this debate. As the organization had already clarified, this debate should only focus on Spain. For this reason, we will exclusively refer with Spanish education to that unique for this country, which is the one regulated or even provided by national institutions such as the Ministries of Education and universities. Now, beginning with our first argument, labor market. In this argument, we will discuss why our current education system does not effectively prepare students for the future labor market, our future labor market. In reality, the next 30 seconds of speech could easily be summarized in one word: uncertainty. But anyway, jobs. Let's talk about jobs. What jobs will there be in the future? Actually, no idea, but certainly not the ones we have today. In fact, according to this paper published by Oxford University in 2015, 47% of our current jobs are in the very likely to be computerized area, which means 80% or more probability of disappearing. And what about skills? Do we know what concrete skills will be demanded in the future? Actually, yes. According to this report from the company Dell, where more than 60 major companies all over Europe, America, and Asia were surveyed, the most mentioned attributes were logical and critical thinking and communication and social skills. Plus, most importantly, the skills that are barely appreciated by them respective to future projection are memorization, specialization, and replication skills. The reason is very simple: machines, computers, and artificial intelligences. Humans cannot compete against machines in memorization, specialization, and replication, but we can indeed be better at critical thinking, communicating, and socializing. Therefore, it is obvious to think that our school system should train us in those areas. Yet, as will be later during this debate be proven, it does not at all. In our second and last argument, mental health, we'll be evaluating the effectiveness of our current schooling system at providing students with mental health and emotional stability in order to be prepared for the increasingly stressful and emotionally demanding world. As with the first argument, in the introduction, I will limit myself to give the clearest outline of the future as I possibly can. Schools are the place where kids spend most active time at. In Spain, the law states that minimum school day must at least last 5 hours long. In practice, most Spanish students spend somewhere between 6 and 7 hours in school during their state mandatory education period. This means that schools and teachers have a fundamental role in the emotional support for kids, including their correct emotional development. Another factor to consider is the ever more stressful environment our young generations have to live under. Social media, demanding markets, harsh competition between peers, and many other factors that can cause anxiety and mental illnesses are more prevalent in our society than ever. In fact, the stress levels could be clearly correlated to mental health deterioration. As we can see in this chart published by the National Institute of Statistics, suicide rates in Spain have been skyrocketing during the last 30 years. Hence, it is paramount that our young generations are prepared for this mentally demanding future and for schools to do their part at teaching kids to be mentally stable. Yet, as it will be shown in our first rebuttal, schools are catastrophically failing at this task. All in all, due to our two arguments, labor market and mental health, my team and I are certain that 21st century education does not adequately prepare us for the reality we'll face after finishing our education. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, David, for your turn. So now it is time for the first rebuttal of the 4 team. It will be done by?
Can you hear me?
By Jorge. Yeah, can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Hello, my name is Jorge, and today I'll be doing the first rebuttal for the favorite team. To start off, I'll be going argument by argument, while also building ours. So your first argument was labor market. Students should develop in-school abilities so that they, in the future, can adapt to this reality that will obviously change, and to all these jobs that will emerge. To defend this, we believe that a grading system, such as the one the Spanish education has, will bring students closer to the reality they will eventually face, just like in the real world. It is important to stand out to succeed, sometimes in fields never explored before. The exams in which this grading system is based will encourage the students to work harder in order to get better results and differentiate from those students that, with a lack of interest and dedication. A grading system that forces the students to develop skills of adaptation, organization, acquisition of knowledge, among others. A grading system which offers a healthy competition if students and teachers collaborate together if any help is needed while studying. A grading system accompanied of various projects and presentations that we hope to improve those abilities they don't with exams, because yes, we are still able to recognize that only exams might not be enough to develop all the necessary soft skills, but don't worry, because there will be plenty of other assignments and tasks. However, you also criticize exams, but truth is that there's much more behind those exams, and that question that supposedly everything is based on, which is obviously a lie. Because educators shouldn't give up on traditional classrooms tests so quickly. Studies show that tests can be valuable tools to help students learn, such as this one from Washington University, which states that results reveal that practice tests are more beneficial for learning, restudying, and all other comparison conditions. Yes, it is probably a system that still needs some improvement in grades rewarding, but definitely not in preparing the students to the unexpected reality they will face. Again, as I see another time the argument of memorization, implying that the studying method used in the public Spanish system has to be memorization. That's not true. As we proved, as I just said, students will be able, with the Spanish education system, to develop their own methods of studying, which better adapts to the education itself, no, and the future that they will face. Okay, then you talk about mental health. First of all, they do school do last 5 hours as the recommended. So maybe know that, because yes, we complete that requirement. But also we believe that this education does conform to the 44 approximately hours of work recommended per week, which allows the students to cope their academic life with their social and physical, rising productivity and happiness. If time is managed in an organized manner, but still being enough so that students can get used to work ethic that they will most certainly experience in the future. And isn't that what we're debating about? We also talk about how we should give instruction to students about, well, how to manage their emotions. But I can put you an example. It's a direct example. So, in schools, there has been instruction given to students about drug consumptions. and how these conceptions could harm them. But truth is that we can see an increasing amount of consumption of drugs within the youth, proving that these instructions might not work at all, and we will just waste resources on that. I'm willing to see some evidence on how the education is directly related to this lack of well-being. Truth is that you might be blaming the education as your argument so far lacks of even any evidence. Well, it really isn't the education's fault, and by making those statements, you're simply ignoring many other and definitely game-changing factors as the socioeconomic ones we mentioned in the introduction. While education has been improving in the last decades by a lot, with the implementation of technology and a more practical-based education, for example, unemployment or success rate seems to be decreasing, which clearly proves that this lack of success is mainly affected by socioeconomic factors, like that of the fact that now it's more difficult to apply for a job. But I'll leave the rest for my teammates. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge, very much for your turn. So let's listen to the first rebuttal of the against team, which will be done by?
That would be me.
Alba, hello.
Shall I start?
Wait a moment, please. Yes, I'm ready.
All right, in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. My name is Alba Borrego, and I am the first refuter for the team against the question, does the 21st century education system adequately prepare students for the reality they will face after finishing their education? Before beginning with our own argument, we would like to speak a bit about the arguments the previous team has just presented. In their provable success argument, they said that we are going to present circumstantial evidence on how the system is not adequately preparing students for the future, and yet the relationship in this argument is principally since people are successful, the system is good, which at its own is what they are saying that we are going to present, circumstantial evidence. They also tried to attack our own argument, our labor market argument, saying that since we attacked exams, there is much more behind exams, and the system isn't only based on memorization. But as we will further present, not only is the system basically based on memorization, even if there's much more work behind exams, what is being graded are those actual exams. Now we would like to begin with our own argumentative line. First, our labor market argument. In an ever-changing society, the best educational systems will be those that are able to adapt to ever-changing necessities. Having settled the context of our future labor argument in the introduction, for this argument, we will show how the Spanish educational system certainly does not prepare us for our upcoming labor market. It is widely known that the Spanish educational system is heavily based on the memorization of theory. In fact, having a quick glance at the modules in Madrid Complutense University bachelor's degree in school teaching, better known as magisterium, it can be quickly identified which are the most important areas of study. Out of 8 semesters and 45 mandatory subjects, only 3 of them are related to the student's efficient development of psychology, whereas more than 40% of them are exclusively focused on academic subjects such as physics, chemistry, mathematics, language, history, etc. So how can students not be trained to be data warehouses if teachers are trained to be it too? Moreover, the assessment criteria in the Spanish educational system are exactly those that machines are best at. For instance, let's see this command in terms in this high school sophomore year exam. State, define, describe, and outline. All of these have one thing in common. They only want the student to memorize the textbook and vomit all their knowledge out all over this exam. This makes students oblivious to the practical applications of what they are learning, and they don't truly interiorize it. In short, in this argument, we have effectively proven that our schooling system trains us to be robots through a methodology based on academic bulimia, just the contrary to what we should be trained to be, humans. This will inevitably end up in students not being prepared for the future labor market, where robotized humans will not be able to compete in any way against actual machines and artificial intelligence. This takes us to our second argument, our mental health argument, in which we claim that the schooling system in Spain does not offer an effective psychological support and education to its students. As with our first argument, the context and future regarding mental health has already been explained in the introduction. Therefore, I will focus on how the school fails to prepare students mentally. First of all, schools usually have 1 or 2 psychologists for every school section, for instance, primary. In Spain, a normal classroom is roughly 25 students. A normal section with 6 grades and 3 classrooms per section sums up to around 525 students. Even in a private school with 2 psychologists per section, each physician would have more than 250 patients. Can you even imagine a psychologist having more than 250 patients to follow up with? This is clearly not enough to ensure every student's well-being. Secondly, even if 2 psychologists were actually enough, there's a clear lack of mental health issues, prevention, and understanding. At most, schools have like 1 session per year talking about the importance of mental health. Most students are only aware of the existence of depression, anxiety, or other mental health disorders when someone close to them develops these diseases, or in the worst case, they themselves. Just like students are taught how to deal with their physical changes during their puberty period, it is also necessary and crucial to give them the correct guidance in their emotional development, especially because at one point in their future, they will have to deal with the real world and the stress that it carries with it by themselves. In a nutshell, as places where children live and grow, schools should provide with all their basic needs during their time that they are mandatorily at school, including mental health support and education, which have clearly been demonstrated to be conspicuous of their absence. So, in a resumed manner, with our 2 arguments and our strong argumentative line, labor market and mental health, we are able to prove that the answer to the question, does the 21st century educational system adequately prepare students for the reality they will face after finishing their education, is only answered with a firm and outright no, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, and much of luck for the contrary team.
Well, thank you very much for your turn. Just for you to know, you had 7 seconds left for reaching 5 minutes, which shouldn't be problematic for the moment being. Okay, so now it is the turn of the second refutator of the 4 team, which is?
It's me, yeah.
Okay, Marcos. I'm ready, so whenever you want.
All right. Hello, my name is Marcos Carmona, and today I'm going to be doing the second rebuttal for the 4 team, defending the idea that the current education system is an adequate preparation for the life students will experience after graduation. Now, starting right with refuting your arguments, the first one is, I think you focused on something on our socioeconomic aspects and misconstrued our point substantially. For one, I don't know where you got the idea that we said that people are successful, therefore the system is successful, when in fact we are arguing quite the opposite. We're treating the issue with nuance, and we're acknowledging that things like higher rents, more interest rates on loans, less access to jobs due to automation that is out of the control of the education system, those are the contributing factors to economic failure by the young generation, not education. In fact, you've been mentioning that unemployment in the youth and depression as well as that have been going up with each generation. However, I'm sure, as you can acknowledge, the education system has only progressively gotten better. You attack systems like exams, yet in modern times, exams have been become a less substantial part of it, as I'll explain in a bit. And yet these numbers still going up. It's almost like there's a society outside of education that affects these students when they graduate. Now, speaking of exams, you've mentioned that, and you've made kind of a false notion of what the education system is, saying that pretty much the only method of evaluation is through exams. I'll get to the question in a second, is through exams. However, the reality is that the Spanish education system takes into account many more methods of evaluation, such as presenting, group projects, critical analysis, and essay writing. All of these factors and all of these assignments can contribute to your grade. Yes? Question?
How is examination not the only way that we are evaluated? If the way that we get into university depends on the eval, which is actually an exam, which is based on memorization?
Well, sure, but the general evaluation and the grades you get are dependent on a variety of assignments. As in, you're graded throughout the entire year, not just off that one exam. That one exam may be a substantial portion of it. However, you cannot lie and say that the soft skills aren't present, because they are, and students are actively required to participate in these different aspects that build up their soft skills, which you claim are not built up at all. Next up, you have actually made the claim that, well, I'll correct assumption that jobs will disappear as they are now, which I agree, they will disappear. However, at the same time, you argue the fact that because they're disappearing, we should teach particular trade skills. The way I understood it is that you want things like IT or technology jobs to have classes in school. However, I think this is actually pretty irresponsible, considering the fact that, like you said, AI may make a lot of these jobs irrelevant in the future. Don't you think it's a lot more reasonable to take a general education approach that actually gives students a well-rounded profile with things like physics, math, and language that are all subjects that are incorporated into other fields, especially things like math, which again are used in programming amongst a ton of other fields, and particularly language, which is used in pretty much every field. You mischaracterize our position as saying we want robo-humans to take over the world and to make up our society. However, our position is quite the opposite. We're saying that the system, as it teaches now, self-sufficiency and well-roundedness is something that is valuable for our generation and should be promoted. Now, getting to mental health. Like my colleague said, you characterize school as being way too stressful and all these things. However, students are in the recommended hours of 44 hours per week. Now, this indicates to us that actually the school system is doing a pretty good job of preparing students for the work and for the job force. As in, once they start working, they're going to have to face these hours. And I assume, and I think this is a logical assumption to make, that if they had never once experienced in their life working those hours and they suddenly jump to a 44-hour work week as recommended, they would struggle significantly. Now, you actually pointed out that there are counselors in these schools that are mandatory by law. However, and you say that psychologists have to deal with too many students at the same time. However, you ignore the fact that there's a whole hierarchy in how students can confront these issues. For example, if I'm struggling with something, I can confront a teacher or an administrator with the problem. And if it's serious, I go to the psychologist. You guys pretend like every single mental health problem that a student faces is all compiled on these psychologists. However, the fact is that these problems are spread out across the administration. Unfortunately, I can't get to your question. And yeah, that's my second rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcos. So now it's time for the second rebuttal of the against team, which will be done by
me, Juan Pablo.
Hello. Wait a moment, please.
Okay.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Juan Pablo, and I'll begin by refuting the other team's arguments and then starting to defend my own. First of all, I would like to talk about the first argument, which talks about provable success. They base this on a sweeping statement that says that modern Spanish education has had a good impact on the material success of these students. So I would like to break down this so-called success of the Spanish education system. Right now, we're using an education system that was mostly divided in the 1990s under the government of Felipe González with the Lopes Law. Granted, there have been many education laws passed in recent governments, but they have really done symbolic changes, or political changes, which the next government just undoes, and so on. So we're trying to prepare students for the 21st century with an education system that wasn't even developed in this century. Then in the short term, this education won't improve because the academic skills that these students are taught are severely lacking. The 2019 PISA report actually shows that Spain has gotten one of its worst reports in areas such as mathematics and sciences, and it shows that it's stagnating, meaning that it won't improve in the future. And what can we see for Spain's education system in the future? Well, a glimpse of it is the LOMLOE law, which has been approved by this government, but it just shows that this trend of governments making political changes and not actual reform will continue. A government will make some changes, and then the next one will undo them, and so on, meaning that the Spanish system has stagnated and won't improve in the future. It won't address the skills that students actually need to learn, such as critical thinking. Yes, your question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you saying that all the changes that have been made for 30 years have just been political changes?
Well, mostly. There hasn't been any significant reform because the today's structure in which the education system, the way the education system is structured today, mostly still comes from that Lobse law under Felipe González's government. Now I would like to go back to the second argument, which talks about philosophical value. First of all, they say that this creates individuals that are mentally prepared to improve. However, this is clearly not the case because this completely clashes with our mental health argument, which I'll then come back to. And then they talk about how the education system promotes work ethic and adaptability. They bring no evidence about this, they just say it. But still, this will not be done to a huge extent because teachers, as we've proven, showing the curriculum from Magisterium, are not taught or not instructed to teach students these basic human skills. So it's not happening simply because teachers are not instructed to teach students these skills. Now, I would like to go back to my own arguments. To our labor market argument, they basically said that our current education system works, that exams and grading encourage students to work harder, and there's more than exams. But the reality is that even though there could be other assessments, more than exams, the end goal is still an exam. The end goal of a student in bachillerato is still to take the EVAU exam for him to go to university. And this exam is based on skills, practically memorizing, students memorizing Spanish history, Spanish literature, vomiting the information on the exam, and then really not remembering it after they've graduated simply because they have no incentive to do so. They say that exams can't disappear, and we're not saying they should. What we're saying is that exams should also try to grade other capabilities in students, meaning the EVAU could incorporate some questions or actually grade students' critical thinking or even include a practical component, which it doesn't have. And they say that our current education system is not only based on memorization, but like I said, that's the only incentive. The only incentive is to memorize, do good on exams, and then forget all of what you've learned. Okay, then they say that bad conditions of Spain's young people are not related to education, but Spanish people or youth that go out of university can work in other European countries. And if our education system is doing bad, then they're not really competitive relative to other European countries, which also are trying to get their students into the labor market. So we can claim that our students are being taught to adapt to their reality if they're not competitive at a global scale. Now, to our mental health argument, they basically said that education is not related to mental health, and that students can talk to other people in school, but we're concerned about students' future. We're concerned that right now, students are not being taught how to properly manage themselves and their problems in an increasingly more stressful world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juan, for your turn. So let's finalize the debate with the conclusions. And now we are gonna watch the conclusion of the against team.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nadia Garcia, and I'm the conclusor for the team against the question proposed to us today. Before I begin with talking about our own arguments and how they've been proved correct, I'll start by stating why the opposing team's arguments have been proven wrong. They first brought an argument about provable success. This we have rebutted by stating that this success isn't actually real because the academic skills that are supposedly taught aren't really that well taught. And we've quote evidence that says that Spain is actually on the lowest ranks. This has been proven by my second rebuttal. Secondly, they've brought an argument about the philosophical benefits of the education system, saying that it mentally prepares students for the future. However, this clashes with our mental health argument because the students are not provided with the hope that they need to learn how to manage anxiety or stress in the future. And they've also talked about how this education system promotes work ethics. However, as my second rebuttal has said, this is not true given that teachers are not instructed how to teach these work ethics and values, but rather how to teach them the information for them to retain it, memorize it, and then write it on the exam and forget about it. Now I will go on to our own arguments and how they stand against the opposing teams and proved us right. Our first argument was the labor market argument, in which we stated that the education system currently focuses on memorization and exams rather than on other critical skills such as critical thinking or interpersonal relationships. The opposing team has tried to rebuttal these arguments by stating that exams are not the only methods and assignments on which a student is graded. However, we have stated clearly that at the end of the day, it is an exam that's going to grade them, given the example of the eval or other final exams in each term. They've also said that memorization isn't the only thing that the Spanish education system focuses on. However, this is not true given the fact that at the end of the day, you have to memorize things for an exam, as we've proven. Our second argument on mental health has been tried to be rebutted by saying that students can go to other people in the school. However, how are they going to learn how to manage their stress or mental health issues in the future if they're not taught from a young age by professionals in the education environment? Therefore, proving that the education system does not currently prepare students for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your turn. So let's finish this great final with the last conclusion.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Please. Yes.
Sorry, can I start?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, I will be starting in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, my name is Guillermo Romero, and I am going to be doing the conclusion for Team Politeia. Throughout the debate, we have seen a great back and forth of arguments with an absolutely, well, clear victor. To start off, we can talk about the arguments that the opposite team attempted to develop, but were gracefully put down by my teammates. Their first argument was the labor one, the labor market. They talk about lack of jobs in the future due to automation, and uncertainty and new skills needed. However, my teammates refute this by saying that our contents are actually almost perfect for their students, as we allow for a much more general view that allows for a flexible, structured system of subjects that allows for a wide range of choices which are well thought out in order to give students the correct opportunities that they need and prepare them for jobs that will in fact exist. As my teammates mentioned, the current system uses a great combination of hard skills and soft skills with other evaluation systems apart from just exams, such as presentations, which are absolutely very common in today's schools. Overall, helping to develop the correct competences that make the difference between being employed and not. The system does not only use memorization. We use a good system that is as similar as possible to the actual reality that will be faced. Students also use other systems of evaluation other than exams, which, by the way, have been proven to be extremely useful by the evidence presented in the first rebuttal. And these other methods are the ones aforementioned, which are the presentations that absolutely help gain competences that are indeed what employers will look for in the future. I must also remind the jury that the other team also constantly relates the failure of students in the job market to school without ever proving that this is indeed the case. In addition to that, we must mention that the opposing team keeps on complaining about exams, yet they base their statistics on more exams, which seems rather hypocritical. Spanish students are prepared for the future, not for PISA. Now, moving on to their next mental health argument, which talks about the anxiety and the stress that students may suffer from. Well, my teammates gladly took this in and refuted by saying that the amount of work is absolutely fitting for the recommended amount of work hours, which if organized well, will absolutely help develop soft skills that can help manage any existing anxiety and stress, something that is most certainly of use in the reality that they will face in the 21st century, clearly showing that they are indeed prepared students. In addition, even though the other team claims that schools do not teach us how to manage our emotions, we refuted by stating the fact that schools provide good routes to overcome any exceeding effects of the stress that the opposing team mentioned, clearly proving that it is not the education's fault that teens, much like other human beings are capable of developing mental illness, meaning that this is something that should not at all be attributed to the education system. As my teammates mentioned, with a well-prepared work ethic and well-supported conscientiousness, students will absolutely always end up with a good preparation and even a good chance of success. Well, that is all I have time for. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for this great final. Now the different judges, we will go to another virtual room to decide the result. But congratulations to everyone involved in this tournament and good luck.
Thank you, and well done to the team as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Congrats to all of you.
Yeah,
you.
good
Well
job,
done, guys.
guys.